I'm Andrew Nesky, and this is Science in the Outer Streams, part two of our discussion of the URI initiative with Bishop William E. Swing, the Episcopal Bishop of California. Bishop Swing, before the break, we were talking about the fundamental problem, it seems, of identity, of faith, of belief in yourself and your social group. I've had a number of people on the show, and I'd like to banty this about with you. It seems that the devil is given credit for a lot of things that don't belong to the devil by many different people who believe in a satanic force. That the devil is anything that doesn't fit into your theology. We have a number of religious leaders that interpret Scripture differently, even within the faith that they pronounce. We have your Jim Joneses, we have your David Koreshes. As a bishop, how would you advise a member of your faith to know when the interpretation of Scripture that they've been given is wrong? How do you advise them not to drink the Kool-Aid?
I was following you, and you sort of took a fork in the road here. What you were talking about is interpretation of evil, and what I find in a lot of surface religion, people who read the Scripture quickly, have a conversion quickly, and use it almost like a weapon. And one of the great hand grenades to use if you're young and zealot is the whole business of the devil. You can, like Joseph McCarthy, calling everybody a communist.
Yes.
The fresh zealots will call everybody demonic. But I think if you spend time getting to know people, their situations, and what they're really about, it's not so much the devil oftentimes as maybe fallen free will. I think we come short of the glory of God. We sin. We do things wrong, but that doesn't mean that we should be personified as the devil. And when we do something good, we aren't God. When we do something bad, we're not the devil. I think it's simplistic to use the great phrases in a superficial way. And certainly, when you're talking about in Afghanistan, for instance, if you have a fairly illiterate bunch of people who they're told that God is on this side and the devil is on that side, they'll charge off and do anything. But that's not just Afghanistan. That's any place in the world and any religion. So that's a tough one.
Would you say that it's a cleric's duty to encourage? Christ was, for instance, as I understand it, was concerned with the question of how one reads Scripture.
Right.
Would you say that it's a cleric's duty to encourage the sense in people that helps them to get through the difficult paradoxes that often are presented in Scripture?
I think there's a progression of thought in Scripture, and we have to be open to God revealing in a new way. And let me give you an example, because I never saw this as a priest or as a bishop until about 3 years ago. I'd read this story about 600 times. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the armed guards come out to get him, and he's surrounded by just a little band of men, and one of them does something that's very religious. He pulls out a sword and whacks off an ear of the slave of the high priest. Jesus says 4 words which I'd never heard him say before. After all the religious killing, after all the centuries, Jesus looked at his disciple who had a sword in his hand, and there was blood, and there was the ear on the ground, and Jesus said, "No more of this." Whatever we understood about killing in the name of God, Jesus says, "Stop, no more." Now, I'd never read that. I'd never been prepared to read that. I've said the words, I've read the story, but I wasn't ready for the radical transformation that was in his voice and in his words. There's something about your heart has to be ready. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, self-control, kindness, faithfulness. The Spirit has to bring you to a level of maturity so that you're ready to hear and to move on. And if you're not, then you just sit around calling people the devil and whacking off somebody's ear and thinking this is very religious.